I see the Fly Society Run Clubs here, so we can start now.
Yeah, we're here.
Well, if you guys want to respect everyone's time, if you guys want to go ahead and start.
Yes,
What's your
yeah.
plan?
Great. Well, everybody, welcome. I am Michael Kowski, the Director of Parks and Recreation with the City of McKinney. Thank you for joining us today to talk about the future of your park system, in particular, the hike and bike trail. Our hike and bike trail has amazing potential, but it can be better. And I think we all know that. So what our goal today is really about collecting information from our stakeholders, get your feedback, understand again how we can make connections better and so on. One of our biggest challenges in this whole endeavor is how exactly do we get those connections made that are missing, and how do we build new trails from scratch? Quite often it involves partnerships with private property, and those are tough to come by, and we're doing our best to make that happen. So be sensitive to that nuance as we talk about this today. I also realize our park system has so much going on with it, but also so much that can be better. And I would encourage you to look at the Parks Development webpage, City McKinney website, hit our Parks and Rec Department pages. You'll find a great collection of plans for future park renovations across the entire system, across the entire city. But today, of course, is going to focus on trails and what that means for us and what we're planning on doing over the next couple of years to make it better. We have a great team with us today. Miss Jenny Baker, our Parks Planning and Development Manager, will introduce our consultants Dunaway and talk about kind of the next steps going forward. But I want to make sure I leave you with one tidbit before I turn it over. There's a survey at the end of this process. That survey will have some open-ended questions on there. I'll give you guys a great chance to add all your feedback. I think many of you folks know our trails better than we do, and we need to know what's working and what's not working. So you have a great chance tonight, as well as with the survey, to add in your feedback and expertise. So with that, Jenny, over to you.
Thank you, Mike. So this plan, Trails Plan, is being developed by our design team at Dunaway Associates. They're a multidisciplinary firm specializing in landscape architecture, planning, engineering. And tonight joining us and who will be leading this discussion, we've got Elizabeth McElrath, Adam Brewster, and Courtney Gomez. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to you guys and get us started.
All right, thanks, Jenny. We'll get unmuted here. My name's Elizabeth McElrath Gerald. I got married a couple of weeks ago, so that's an update. But we have been working with the city for several months now. We have gotten to know your trail system. You actually have a really robust trail system when you look at comparatively other trail systems in the DFW Metroplex. And so there is, like Mike said, there's a lot of potential there. And so we've been trying to work with the city and within our design team on how we can make it better and even take it to the next level. So I have with me Adam Brewster, who we're both landscape architects, and we've been working together on this project for several weeks now. But what we wanted to do in the first couple of slides is take you through the design process, just to give you an idea of what we've been working on and where we're going with this. So we've really approached this in a couple of different phases. Phase one, that was our learn everything we can about your trail system and also about your park system, because it's very related to your trail system. Identify any opportunities and constraints that may inform our design as we move forward. And what we're in now is phase two, where we're actually taking what we've learned in phase one in terms of existing conditions, and now we're putting some concept thought to it. So that's what we want to share with you guys tonight and get some feedback on it. So you see, we're here presenting to you, the users of the McKinney Trail System. So once we get feedback from you tonight, we will take that into our phase three, where we begin to make some recommendations. We'll take this into a preliminary trails master plan document that will go beyond the mapping and the concept level thought that you see tonight. And it'll actually begin, we'll prepare a report that has several pages that show where trails might go, but also start to identify some design standards so that your park staff can use this as a roadmap for planning the trail system for years to come. So that will be our final Trails Master Plan deliverable. Next slide, just kind of an overview of that phase 1 analysis. To go to the next slide. What our first step was to really try to characterize the different zones in McKinney. So you see here, a map of your city, everyone will recognize that. But as we got to know where the trail system was and started to explore neighborhoods, your downtown district and so forth, we started to identify what character zones emerged as we were looking around. So you can see in the bottom, we've got established residential, that's been growing, and you've had developers building trails in established neighborhoods for some time. Craig Ranch is also there. You've got the 121 frontage as well as your Central Expressway freeway frontage, and even 380. That has just, development has grown up along 380. I think we've all recognized that. And there's even a new alignment of that coming that's going to drive development in McKinney in the future. So you'll see in the concept plan later that we've responded to those roadways. We've responded to these different character zones because they're driving where growth is happening and where trails need to happen in your city. So the next slide shows you kind of an overview of the concept diagram. So we've identified these character zones, but then we came up with strategies for how do we maximize your trail system in each one of these different areas. So number one, over on the right, you'll see the Greenbelt Loop Trail. In most of the cities in the Metroplex, we don't have mountains, we don't have beaches, but we do have creek corridors and we do have rivers that run through our cities. Those really become our green spaces. They're floodplains. A lot of times those are left over. Developers don't want to build there and are not able to build there, so they become our park spaces, but they're where people want to be. Those are our natural spaces that we're drawn to. Well, McKinney, you definitely have one that is running right through the middle of town where Bonnie Wink Park is, and you've got a wonderful green belt through that area, but you also have another one parallel to the north. So we've got some ideas on how we might connect those and utilize those for your trail system. So that's what we mean by utilize your Greenbelt Loop Trail, but we think that could be a really unique piece of your park system and your trail system moving forward. Next one is build the framework, and that's within that black circle. McKinney is growing to the north. I think everybody on this call can understand that and would recognize that. So you'll see some strategies about how we want to piggyback some of the trail development with the growth that's happening toward the north. Downtown, you'll see some special thought that we have on how to make downtown integrated by trails, and even maybe give it some unique branding and some draws that add to your tourism. Fill the gaps. So like I said, you've got a great residential trail network. It's just missing a few connecting pieces, whether it's to adjacent cities or whether it's within that blue zone. You'll see our strategies on that coming up. And then of course the regional connections as well. So that's kind of a broad overview of our entire strategy, but there are different layers to that. So how are we going to achieve that diagram? And Adam's going to go into a little bit more detail here in a second, but I want to explain just a few layers to how we achieve that diagram. The first one is with roadside and parkway trails. So I just referred to it a second ago. We piggyback on development that's happening. And then your developers help foot the bill for trails whenever they're on a plan. And we can make key links in your existing network, new arterials or new roadway projects that are expanding with your growth and development that's happening northward. We mentioned the 380 loop. We want to piggyback our trail development with these, and even utilizing your streetscape projects in your denser or your more historic downtown urban areas. So that's one layer of how we're going to achieve the concept. The next layer, we touched on it, is utilizing your green belts and your parks. And so I think this one is fairly self-explanatory, but we definitely want to have access through utility easements and along our drainage ways, as the city staff has already done well. Those have already been pretty developed with your trails, but we want to expand that. Next slide.
Did it go?
Not yet. There we
Okay.
go. So another layer that's really critical and staff has asked us to look at in particular is, how is McKinney approaching your on-street bike strategy? So right now we have bicycle boulevards that are very successful, but a layer of this concept plan is we've got to look at where is it appropriate for on-street, or is it not appropriate at all? So you'll see some ideas in how we've expanded your bike system through town. Next. And then of course, the next couple of slides are really, they're kind of infill, but they're critical to any good trail network. We've got to make sure that all of our crossings are safe, whether they're signalized or they're unsignalized, whether they just have signs. Are they underbridge crossings? Are they at grade? Do they have rest stop amenities like drinking fountains? Do they have shelters? Are they through flood prone areas where we might need to look at something more like a boardwalk instead of an at grade trail? And then there's also trailheads that may be a little bit major in scale that might have some parking assigned to them. So you'll see some thought in the final plan having to deal with crossings and trailheads. And then I think the last one has to do with really the identity of your trail system, and taking some cues in assigning some architectural identity that would represent portals, branding, and just increase your city identity using your trail system and using your park system to do that. So again, that's kind of the overall concept. Adam is going to dive into some detail in each part of town, but then these are the layers that we're going to use to achieve that concept. So Adam, I'll turn it over to you and you can walk them through the detailed plan.
Great. Well, thanks, Elizabeth. Again, I'm Adam Brewster with Dunaway. I'm excited to be a part of this. I've been familiar with McKinney for the last 20 years as my in-laws have lived there in the Stonebridge Ranch for several decades now. So I spend a lot of time there and have really enjoyed watching it grow, and excited to see this additional developments in the city. But what we did, what I want to share with you first is this is kind of an overall map of the entire system. And I know it's a lot to take in first glance. So what you can see there is the legend on the right indicates the type of trails that you have, with the dash being proposed and the solid being existing. And we have some large crossings identified as well, and regional connections into Allen. And I know that's a little bit difficult to read on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into each of these areas that correspond with that concept diagram and walk you through those. And one of the first major elements that Elizabeth mentioned was building the framework to the north. So really, when you think above the Wilson Creek Greenbelt north of 380, and as the development continues to grow up towards Irwin Park, that's what we mean about building the framework. And when we zoom in here, you'll see she mentioned the strategy of coordinating with developers as they develop their land to incorporate these, and as the city improves their arterials. There are already standards in place for greenway arterials, which are similar to the large right-of-way with the trails adjacent to them. We want to use that standard that's already been established for the city when they're building the newer arterials to make sure they do that through this area as well. But the first thing we looked at was how are we going to make our north-south connections? And here are several of those. You can see they're the main roads with Ridge, Lake Forest, and Hardin. Those roads are in place, but there's opportunity to widen some of the sidewalks because it's a mishmash of standards that were developed and installed throughout the construction. So we want to look at unifying those and creating those continuous north-south connections. And then east-west, these are some scheduled arterial widenings and extensions. So for example, Wilmouth continues through today and will go across. We want to look when that is built to tie into the neighborhoods that are there. We anticipate also some future infill in the neighborhoods, and I know the city's working with those developers to have trail connections to them as well. There's also a large east-west utility easement that we can take advantage of to get a crossing, so you're not actually on a street, but give you that east-west connection through this area as well. So those are the three main trail types that we're looking for, or opportunities to develop in this area. And now we're going to share some images just to show you what the character of those are. You can see on Lake Forest, that's an example of a current sidewalk, and that would be an opportunity for us to widen that to be the 12-foot width, more similar to some of the other more developed trail areas. Again, the same thing on Hardin in the upper right. That area, it has a smaller sidewalk, but just north of that, there's no sidewalk. And then further north of that, there's another 12-footer. So the idea is to make the continuation along the entire corridor. And also, you'll notice that we tried to identify drainage corridors and utility corridors in the right, and we see some of those along the large electrical transmission easements that have some ample space for trailways in them as well. When we look at the east-west corridors, you can see the area near Raytheon with a very large amount of easement on the side there would make a great east-west connection. And you can see in the bottom left and the upper right, those are future planned roadway arterials. We want to make sure we design those in a way that can accommodate trails. Another big concept that we discussed is that Greenbelt Loop Trail. And that essentially diagonally cuts across the city using the Wilson Creek and the Honey Creek corridors, connected by existing trails and new arterials. And this is what we anticipate that alignment looking like. You can see the existing green belt on Wilson Creek, the solid line is completed. We'd propose extending that further north, getting under 380 and connecting to a new arterial to the north. Which would then link back to the Honey Creek green belt. And that currently is a natural riparian corridor, great environment and something people want to get down to. So we're encouraging the city to develop that into a linear park trail experience like you have on Wilson Creek. And then a southern connection between the two through the airport area as well. This would also be a signature piece, so you would recognize that you need to have some strategic rest stops along this loop. And we do know off a quick measurement, this is right around 25-mile length. So it's a great amount of for a long ride, or you could do that in pieces and parts if you prefer. And these are just some examples of the undeveloped area on the upper right and Honey Creek Greenbelt there. A lot of space available. Again, it's low lying, so it's prone to flood, but there's great opportunity for park development in this area. You can also see some of these crossings under 380, where the Wilson Creek is. There's ample space to get under that roadway. And that area on the Airport Drive will actually be along where the 380 loop will continue in the future. So looking at the south, as we mentioned, is much more developed and mature than the northern area. And there's a little bit different character on the east and the west. So we've identified, and just the size of each of these areas. I'm going to zoom into the southwest first, and then we'll zoom over to the southeast and look at that space. But within the southwest, the concept here is to fill the gaps. It's a very connected area. You can see all of the network in the background, and these new dashed lines would indicate where proposed roadways could go. And the biggest ideas here are that Stonebridge is very connected, but we want to extend that connectivity to the south, so mainly south of Silverado and towards the Craig Ranch area, as well as to the connections into Allen. And we look for many other gaps to close those spaces. So you can see we've identified a handful of those here, providing connectivity to the parks and the neighborhoods, and just kind of looking for those opportunities to make those links. All right, is slowly clicking through here. All right, so here's some opportunities. There's a development along just north of Silverado and south of Stonebridge that has an older roadway alignment that's not utilized by either of the subdivisions there. It's a great opportunity to make a link connection to continue that network south. So we've identified that as a great opportunity, as well as I'd like to point out that the city's done a great job in building the roadways and bridges that they have today. They've shelved in an area with ample clearance under the bridge. And this is not only in this location, but several locations around the city. So it's set up to receive a trail to allow us to make grade separated crossings at those spaces. Now I'm going to jump over to the southeast. Is a little bit different. This is an older neighborhood with a traditional layout and gridded streets. So there's a lot of parallel roads for slow moving or with lesser traffic. That's comfortable for bikers, and you have bike routes identified on those. We're going to encourage that development and continuation of that in those areas. But there are several links that we feel are important, and really those are links connecting the parks into the downtown area. And I mentioned as well the link from Greenbelt of Wilson Creek to Honey Creek along the Airport Drive that would make that continuous connection for that loop trail. You also see other links that link into cultural districts and new parkland, like the Heard Museum and the park property in the north. And here's examples of some of those trails and opportunities. The greens that are in there is a great opportunity for some nature trails. We know there's an old golf course that's been turned into those nature preserve, and it's a fantastic place to go out and walk, but there's an opportunity to upgrade and use that area to connect some critical links as well. And you can see an older trail portion there's connecting towards Town Lake that can be upgraded and make a critical connection back towards downtown. This is just some examples of future parkland that's going to come available, and we're encouraging loop trail connections within these, so you can connect to the trail system, but also do loops within them, and some of the obstacles with Airport Roadway being there as well. But when we look at that area, I mentioned the big idea and the big interest in this area was creating the connections from downtown area into the greater network. So we've got that cultural district here in the middle identified in this box, and we're really trying to make that final link into this area. All right. You want to run with this, Elizabeth? So talk about some of the ideas we have for downtown and the trail system.
Yeah, and so as we're as we're thinking through the citywide system, we've got we're really taking it from a couple of different approaches. Number one, we're thinking first about serving McKinney residents and making sure that people can get from their neighborhoods and places they work and go to school and use trails for exercise, use it for alternate means of transportation, for recreation, and so forth. So, your city staff is really focused on providing that to McKinney citizens, but we also live in a broader Metroplex. And so when we think about your trail system, we also have to think about regional connections. And so two things. One word we haven't really used just yet is the belie web. And so in all of the regional connections that we're thinking about at your city's edge, whether it's into Frisco or Allen or, some of the other cities surrounding McKinney, we are thinking in terms of a broader connection and using the North Central Texas Council of Governments belie web to connect McKinney regionally throughout the whole Metroplex. But another regional draw that is really unique to McKinney is your downtown district or your cultural district. So a lot of people, when they think of McKinney, they think about coming to the downtown and eating in the restaurants and spending time in the charming downtown. And it's really a tourist draw, whether it's from whether it's your own residents using it, whether it's folks from other places in the Metroplex or people who travel to McKinney and they stay for the weekend and enjoy the downtown and the historic neighborhoods around it. So what we wanted to do was take what was already special about McKinney and connect that into your trail system. And so as Adam has talked about, there are definitely some key connections that we can make into the more populated parts and the more active parts of downtown. But we wanted to make sure that the downtown character is preserved even as we pull in new trail connections. So some of the older, more historic neighborhoods that are surrounding your downtown, one of the things that kind of makes them have the character that they have are narrower sidewalks that don't encroach into front yards. You've got tree-lined sidewalks. You've got some special paving that happens in certain areas. So we want to make sure that we preserve that character, but we also want to make that area special. So we pull in a trail hierarchy of just streetscape treatments that may have some different lighting that characterizes the downtown, upgrade some of your finishes, maybe add some identity and wayfinding. You've got some of that already. But one of the things that we think could be unique and really turn your trail system into a tourist draw is to come up with a tourism loop. And so it's something that could be trail focused, whether it's bike rentals or whether people do it as pedestrians. But there is a loop that they could go around and look at different historic sites around downtown, or they could look at different art and sculptures. But there are maps that they can see and they can go to different spots. And so we wanted to show you a couple of different examples of not the exact same scale, but a couple of different examples where this has been successful in other communities. So a lot of people on this call may have been to Boston as a tourist. And of course, there's a lot of history in Boston, that goes without saying, but they have the Freedom Trail. And what this Freedom Trail is, you can see the map on the left-hand side. The red line is an actual red line that is either painted or it's in pavers along the walkways. And it's a pedestrian tour of historic sites around Boston. And you get to different stops and you can You can follow the map and you can learn about the history of Boston as you walk through the city and enjoy it as a pedestrian or as a cyclist. So that's, kind of a broad scale. Boston has done that, lots of history, but even newer communities have done this in a successful way. So there's the Urban Trail in Asheville, North Carolina, and this is really more public art focused. So it's got a little bit um, more fun focus to it, but you can see all the stops that are on the map. Pedestrians can walk around and they've got their different stops that they can enjoy. And, these even become Instagram photo opportunities. But what it does is it links your tourism that you've already got going in your downtown with your trail system, and it becomes another layer of why people come to downtown McKinney. So we think that could be a really successful and a unique piece of your park system. Other communities that have done this, whether it's Fort Worth or other places in the Metroplex, there are infrastructure opportunities that then you can implement, like bike rentals. Those have been very successful along the Trinity Trail in Fort Worth, for example. But bike lockers, lots of access to your restaurants and other coffee shops and other shopping stops. So making sure that we've got room and amenities that support both pedestrians and your cyclists. So anyway, that's the idea for downtown, is to really take what you've already turned into a tourist draw and give that another layer of attraction for downtown McKinney. So, I know we've talked in a lot of detail, trying to cover a lot of material in just a little bit of time. But this is the overall concept plan, and you can see that there's a lot of different layers to it. There's a lot of different pieces of thought that have gone into it. We realize that you're probably going to take need a minute to digest it all. So I know that this is being recorded, so it's going to be posted on the city website, and you'll be able to go back and re-listen to it if you like. But let's go on to the next slide. What we'd really love to hear, and we can also look at the chat and see if anybody has any questions here in a minute, but we need your feedback. We've created a survey, so you can either follow the QR code, take a picture of that's on your screen right now, or I believe we should be able to post this link in the chat, and you can copy that, or you can click on that, and it'll take you to a survey that's 6 or 7 questions long. So it's a very brief survey, but it asks some questions that's going to help our design team go from this concept plan into a little bit more detail. So I'll pause for a minute. Here, I'd like to check the chat and see if anybody has any questions right now. We're happy to answer those. But this questionnaire, this survey is going to be open until May 28th, and feel free to take this link, share it with your neighbors. We want to make sure that as many people as possible that use the McKinney Trail System are able to complete it. So just looking at the chat right now, I don't see any questions just yet, but we'll open that up.
Hey, Elizabeth, it's Jeff. I had a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are accepting verbal questions, but
yes, please. Go
anyway,
ahead.
I moved to McKinney a number of years ago, and came to McKinney because of it was on the fringes of the city, and still had kind of that natural beauty to it.
Mhm.
And I've been riding bikes since I was a kid, so I'm very happy to see us engage and try and improve the community to kind of extend that so future generations can have a love and passion for two wheels.
Mhm.
That said, there's a lot of concrete in the plan, and natural parks like Irwin offer the community ways to get away from cars and ways to get away from people looking at their phone instead of driving.
Mhm.
So one area I would challenge y'all to think about is not only arteries around the community, but also micro areas within the community where people can kind of get off the concrete and enjoy riding in maybe a more natural setting.
Yeah.
Other areas like as close as like Sherman, there's been a high level of engagement with dirt trails in the area, and I'd love to see something like that in the area. I look at communities that have done that on a larger scale, like Bentonville, Arkansas. There is a high level of engagement with the biking community, and I don't know if this is like a first step in that direction. And I swear there's a question here somewhere, but I guess the question would be, is this a first step in that direction, or is I guess concrete I guess the full scope of this plan?
No, I think we can say definitively that concrete is not the full scope of this plan. Any good trail system has a hierarchy of different trail widths and also different trail surface types. And so this plan will include both concrete as well as soft surface trails. Did that help, Jeff? I didn't see that you went back to mute there.
Yeah, just trying to be mindful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So is that in the scope of like future plans or proposals, or is it beyond the scope of what's in the plan right now?
No, it's not beyond what's in the scope of the plan right now at all. So I think what you're thinking of, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the question. When we think about, the actual design and installation of specific off-road trails, a lot of times there are groups in our area that, we can form partnerships with. I know you may have a few of those that are working even in Irwin Park and some of the more natural focused park areas. But in terms of making sure that soft surface trails are addressed in the plan, as we're looking at the citywide planning document, we will definitely have a section in there that talks about recommendations for soft surface trails.
Hey, Elizabeth, too. Seth and Lance, that's myself. We're here. We actually work on Irwin's trail crew, and so to talk, and so does Brian, but to talk directly to Jeff, that I do think that the soft surface trails are going to end up becoming a big part of our McKinney trail system, and sort of not necessarily going in 100% the direction that Bentonville did, but I think that we can mimic partial trail systems that will enhance our trails to that extent, or at least start pushing in that direction.
Yeah. And that's something that we as a staff want to see. We've had multiple discussions just internally, and we recognize the need for the soft surface and natural trails. We get comments, emails, phone calls very often. So that is something that we're looking at addressing on our end as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just to join in with the conversation, this is Mike again, the Director of Parks and Recreation. So how we approach trails is multifaceted. Some are concrete and take years to develop, to get the land, everything else. What I've heard more and more with meeting with our colleagues out in the field is there's a volunteer spirit out there who want to help us do some of these softscape natural trails at different scales out there. And I think Jeff asked the question about where we are in the process. This is step one in getting our hooks in those people to come join us and help us and offer that feedback to help realize some of those things. In fact, my goal is to do some of this work on a volunteer basis. Let's get out there together, have work days, and get it done. So I know Lance and Seth, you and I met on this topic already, and really inspired us to think about the near-term things we can do for our park system.
Good. All right, thank you guys. I'm going to try to keep up with some of the questions that are coming in on the chat here so we can make sure that everything gets addressed. So the first one looks like it's had to do with, is this all paved roads or trails, or does this include dirt and off-road trails? So I think we just addressed that one. Tamara says, I was wondering if there are any plans for more prominent names, trail markers, as well as trail mile markers for safety and emergency use. That's actually a really good layer to any safe trail system. And so the overall trail master plan will have a section where we recommend mile markers, maybe even 911 markers. I'm sure you've seen a lot of cities around the Metroplex have instituted those systems. So those are all a very good idea. And then a follow-up question, what is the projected timeline on all of the different parts? Well, that's a good question. In terms of a projected timeline, it's going to take a number of years to take the entire Trails Master Plan and get everything implemented. Mike brought up something very good. It all depends on funding, and anytime that you can have volunteers that come in and help, then that makes trails get on the ground a little bit more quickly. So one thing that's unique about this plan, and just where McKinney is in your state of growth, you've got a lot of development that's happening toward the north, as we talked about earlier. So getting our trails on a map and adopted by city council in a master plan like this, that helps us partner with developers so that as development happens, the trails can be installed. So the quicker development happens, the quicker your trail system it can get installed. So in terms of a timeline, not an exact timeline, but it will take a number of years. But I don't know if anybody on city staff wants to talk about priorities necessarily, but I know development is happening very quickly, and I think parts of it is going to happen faster than you think. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Especially as the growth is extending towards the north. Obviously, when it's on city property, we have more control over timing and and funding. But when it's when the trail is being developed in place of a sidewalk, that's part of the development process. Then we're kind of subject to, or not subject to, but kind of at the mercy of development schedules.
Right. And, in terms of funding, not all of your funding has to come from city dollars. There are grant opportunities that are out there, and there is a lot of state funding opportunities that can be gone after and can help that funding and help the trail systems grow a lot faster. So that actually the master plan will help with some of those recommendations. We'll work with city staff on helping to identify some of those. All right, next question. Is there a plan for a trail near the reservoir off Hardin and 380? We have a green belt at the Heritage Bend community, and just curious if there's any plans for that area. I might defer to you, Adam, on that one. And if, there you go.
380 and Hardin is this Hardin?
No, Hardin is just to the, there you go.
That's there Hardin. It is. You see the lake to the, yeah.
That guy. I'm not aware of that. Jenny, you may speak to development in that area. I know there is some large developments occurring in this area, and they have a comprehensive private trail network within that. Does that fall within that area?
I want to say Heritage Bend is on the west side of Hardin, north of 380. I could be incorrect, but we do, there are plans for internal trails, within that development as it comes along. But we do, obviously you showed the plan along Hardin, and then, or I'm sorry, the trail along Hardin, and then also on the new connector road that extends up to 380. But I can certainly flag that and take a closer look at that area.
Okay.
Right. Okay, let's see. Paul says there originally was a trail planned from Hilltop Park over the creek to the west. I understand that was canceled due to homeowners along the easement and not wanting a trail. What is going to prevent this from happening again on your planned routes? Just in terms of, homeowners asking that trails not happen next to their communities. I would say that the majority of the trail system that you're seeing, the majority of the yellow lines, you can see that those are parkway trails. And then the ones that are Greenbelt and Park Trail, those are largely park properties. So it seems like the instance of that happening would probably be, maybe few and far between. So there's probably nothing that could prevent a homeowners association from saying we don't want a trail nearby. But really the experience that we've had is that most homeowner associations welcome the trail because it increases your property values, and most people just want access to that recreation within walking distance. So that's been our experience with it. Paul, I hope that helps with the question there. Looks like the next one says, I apologize if I missed it, but are bike lanes included? Yes, we do have a bike section, an extension of your bicycle boulevard concept that the city's already implemented. Definitely understand, yes, cycling on high-speed roads can be dangerous with aggressive drivers in our area.
So we're working with the city on the on-street bicycle strategy. As you know, they have the bicycle boulevards they try to locate those on lower traffic roads. So much of the strategy is going to be a continuation of what is seen there today. And we're working with staff and engineering to see their thoughts as well on introducing bike lanes to specific roads. Can't say that it's a done deal. So that's something that we're working on.
So a follow up to that, I see these bike boulevards are like in neighborhoods, but like the cycling that I do and a lot of my colleagues are over 20 miles an hour, and you can't really do that on these back roads. So we really need a better solution to, take roads out of town. Like currently we're just riding on Hardin because that's our best option, but I would love to see a safer option for us.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Danielle suggests that we should connect with the North Texas Trail Runners nonprofit group. So I don't know, Mike or Jenny, you guys may already be aware of that group, but that would be, those are always good volunteer groups to connect with. So thank you for that, Danielle.
Got that noted.
All right. Okay, I think I've got to the bottom of the chat questions. Does anybody have any other questions that they'd like to ask with the group? And Adam, if you don't mind, maybe go to the survey slide once more. Let's make sure that that QR code is up so that if you want to take a picture of that and get into the survey, you can. If not, I think we said we were going to try to get that. Adam, can you take the link and copy that into the chat so folks have another way of getting to the survey?
Let's see.
And like I said, it's a pretty short survey. There's really only just a couple of questions.
Here they are.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Yep, so it'll just take a few minutes. And if you want to forward that to your neighbors, we would love to have as many people complete that survey as possible. It'll be open until May 28th. And then we'll pull in the results and we'll take that under consideration with your comments and your questions tonight in developing our preliminary master plan. So our goal right now, just in terms of time frame and the overall planning process, our goal is to take the month of June and really advance the preliminary plan so that in July and later in the summer, we are working very quickly toward a final master plan that the city can have as a final deliverable and have that roadmap forward. All right, let's see, any other questions? I haven't seen any more come through the chat.
Thank you guys for taking the time to join us, and we appreciate the comments and look forward to your survey results. And like, just to echo Elizabeth, if you send those on to friends and family, there's opportunity in there for answering our questions, but also additional comments. So feel free to leave those and let us know if there's particular spots you want us to look at or connections we want to make or other concerns you have. So thank you.
I just want to add real quick, I see in the chat, we've got a question on who's the best person to contact about volunteering. If you just want to send us an email, like a contact parks email, we can get you in touch with who you need to speak with.
Yeah.
So on our website, we have a contact-parks email that goes to a wide range of people in the department.
Also, if anybody out there is interested in volunteering out at Irwin Park, you can check it out on Facebook. Just essentially go to Dorba and then look for Irwin, and we post all the time for just public work days. So come out to one of those if you guys are interested in volunteering out at Irwin Park. So that's just Facebook, and then Dorba, which is Dallas Off-Road Biking Association.
It's good. All right.
Well, I'll say some closing remarks. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you, Dunaway, for all your work on this project. It's really coming together, but we need your feedback. I'll say it again. Your comments are so appreciated. We will use that to inform the next steps. And I will also say we received back some survey results that were sent to city residents recently. And basically, hike and bike trails were noted as a key priority for the city. And City Council has adopted that notion, and we are applying resources to that end. So this is a great time in McKinney, and it's a great chance for you folks to help shape your park system. So thank you again, and have a great evening.
Yep. Thank you.